As someone who makes end-of-year lists come December of my best books of the year, and who divides those lists into best books written in English and best books in translation, like the Booker Prizes, I admit to the fact that I start thinking about what will make those lists pretty early. Come March, I'm starting to think, okay, what so far could make that list? For the English language list, right now, my favourite book of this year so far has been In Ascension by Martin McInnes. And for the books in translation list, we've got this: Honeybees and Distant Thunder by Riku Onda. This is a Japanese novel translated by the legendary Philip Gabriel. And as far as I know, it's her third book translated into English after the Aosawa Murders and Fish Swimming in Dappled Sunlight. However, I haven't read either of those two. I was really excited to read Fish Swimming in Dappled Sunlight, and then I never got around to getting a review copy or buying it and reading it. But Honeybees and Distant Thunder is an absolute masterpiece, and I have no qualms about calling it that. It absolutely is. This novel is a 400-page love letter to music in more ways than you would expect. If I call something a love letter to music, you might immediately have an idea or two about what the book would cover, how it would feel to read it, what themes it might explore. This book does it in ways that I really didn't expect. As a music lover, as a music fanatic who spends as much time listening to music as I do reading, I was so enamored with it and impressed by Onda's approach to talking about and showing a love for music as a concept, as a tool for community building, as a thing to enrich the spirit, and as a motivator. The relationship between people, individual humans and humanity as a whole, and music is really fascinating in this. It's a book that examines the human spirit, our capacity for creativity, our innate talents, our ability to hone our skills, practice and develop ourselves, and also our capacity for love and friendship, where love and friendship can be inspired and motivated by common ground, and the common ground in this is music. Honeybees and Distant Thunder is a 400-page novel spread across a music competition. All of the characters in it are protagonists in their own ways. They are each contestants or judges in this international music competition. Specifically, it's about classical piano. All of the contestants are classical pianists. And although it's an international competition, this year it's taking place in a cute, small coastal town just a little bit out of the way from Tokyo. The blurb kind of highlights three protagonists, and yeah, I can see the logic in that. There are three main protagonists and lots of supporting characters that you end up caring about almost as much. Those three protagonists are a girl called Aya, a boy called Masaru, and another boy called Jin. Each of them is a very distinct character in their own way. Aya is one that asks for a lot of audience sympathy. She's a 20-year-old girl who, when she was younger, choked up on stage and bolted from a piano competition. She's got trauma related to that incident, but she also has a lot of familial related trauma when it comes to her relationship to her mother, and generally her relationship to her childhood, to music, and the way that her life and music overlap. She's someone who is frightened of her own talents, frightened of music, worried about her future, worried about her connection to the thing that she loves, and she very much has a kind of love-hate relationship with music. And it's at this point that you kind of realize what a music competition can do to a person. Aya loves music, she loves performing, but performance is artificial to a point. Competitions are not always healthy. They can be, and this book discusses that. Examines the ways in which competition can be a really beautiful thing. A motivator, a thing to bring communities together, a thing to promote particular people and their art, and the art itself. But competition's also toxic. It's frightening. It can be tampered with. Judges are not perfect. They are biased. Bias itself is an innately interesting thing. So there's a lot to examine here, and you see a lot of that toxicity and positivity through Aya's eyes specifically. Then you have Masaru. Masaru and Aya, very briefly when they were kids, were good friends, but Masaru ended up moving abroad and living abroad and growing up there. I can't remember where now, actually. I think it was predominantly in the US. And so Masaru is an interesting character in his own way, but I viewed him personally more as a supporting character in Aya's story. A potential love interest, a potential friend, a potential villain, or at least a worthy competition. Someone who might motivate her and bring the best out in her, or frighten her. He's a protagonist as well as an antagonist, which is very interesting in its own right, but I did see him more of a motivating tool within Aya's story than a protagonist in his own right. If you read this, you might agree or disagree with that. And then you have the third main protagonist, a boy called Jin. Now, I grew up playing video games, and hilariously his name is Jin Kazama, which is the name of a protagonist from the Tekken series of fighting games, which I just enjoyed. That's a side note that you don't need to care about, but I do. Jin's really, really interesting. He's Japanese born, raised in France. He doesn't own a piano. He's also learning to be a florist. His dad is a traveling beekeeper, and Jin was taken in as a student and apprentice of a legendary, world-famous pianist called Hoffman. And Hoffman, before he died, presented Jin to these judges, to his friends, to other people in the music world, and specifically described Jin as a gift. Hoffman said, "On my deathbed, this is my gift to the world of music. This boy, Jin Kazama, he's my gift." And all the way through the book, Jin is presented as a kind of prodigy. And I guess he is. He plays piano, he sees classical music in general as a uniquely creative thing. But he is innately talented, he's very unusual, he's quirky and eccentric, he dresses strangely, he doesn't see music in the professional way that other people do, he doesn't respect it, he's not foppish and needlessly conservative when it comes to the traditions of classical music. None of that. That's not Jin. He's a child prodigy and he comes with all of the fun eccentricities that you expect. But that adds so much spice and flavor to this novel. Without Jin, it would be a potentially quite dry novel, but Jin really adds color to it. He's eccentric. I keep using that word, but eccentricity is the thing this book needed, and that's what Jin gives it. As a drummer, I enjoy the legend about Buddy Rich, the old jazz drummer, who apparently never practiced. He only ever went out on stage and played. He never practiced. It's a fun legend about one of the greatest drummers to ever live. Jin is kind of like that. There are now questions about his behavior. The strange fact that he doesn't own his own piano. There's a lot of strangeness to him that's really, really fun. But as I said, this entire novel is stretched over a single competition. And there are also other point-of-view characters. The very first character that you follow is a judge, a woman called Mieko, who again is Japanese but lives in France and works as a pianist and a judge, etc., etc. And you get to know a bit about Mieko. There's also a young man who is really, really amiable. He's a 28-year-old man who's already married with a kid, maybe 2 kids. And he's at the cut-off age for this competition. He's the oldest person competing, and he feels like he's missed his chance, and he wants to be a professional musician. He kind of already is, but he wants to do it more, and this competition's a way for him to do that. And you kind of just enjoy his story where he feels too old to be there, despite only being 28. And while I was reading, I couldn't help picturing him as like a man in his 50s or 60s by the way that they talk about his age, but I also understand this is a very specific world. This is not the world. This is a microcosm. This competition, this world of music, it's a microcosm. And certain things are expected and certain things aren't, and he's an interesting character in that way. So as you go through it, you are constantly chapter to chapter, subchapter to subchapter, moving from perspective to perspective. It's A Song of Ice and Fire by George R. R. Martin, but in a music competition. A game of music. That was rubbish, I'm sorry. And I do have to say that my own criticism, even though I'm not sure it's a criticism, is given the book's length, there is an incredible, lengthy focus on music itself. And I really respect Riku Onda for this, because there is no music coming out of the pages. So when each person stands up on stage to give their performance, to compete and then hopefully move up to the next round, there could be 10, 20 pages dedicated to that piece of music. And you will see it through another character's eyes while they're in the audience, or they're at the judges' table, or they're on the side of the stage watching from the wings. They will observe and listen, and they will describe it. So you're getting to know their perspective and their personality through what they think of the other people competing, but you also get to know about the music itself. Onda clearly loves classical music, and a lot of composers and symphonies, etc., are all thrown around. I'm not a classical music expert, my partner is, and over the months and months that we've been together, I've been getting to learn a lot about classical composers, their histories, their lives, and obviously the pieces that they wrote. So I know more now than I did a year ago, and that has helped me a little bit when it comes to appreciating some of the research, the history, the context of this book, but it's certainly not necessary, because I'm still far from being any kind of expert. In fact, one composer that my partner really likes and has played me a lot of is Mahler, and Mahler is not mentioned in this, so that didn't help. But in order to try to convey the music, Onda has done the smart thing of showing us the music from the eyes of the people who know it, the people within the story, so it's all contextual, and the people who are watching it and giving their opinions and their judgments as it's being performed, and what's so special about the people performing it. So you get to feel like you can hear it and experience it and experience the feeling of it. And this is beautiful because it shows a dedication to music, an appreciation for it. You feel humbled by the music. But at the same time, as I said, this is also kind of a criticism because these passages go on forever. And if I think about it, it could easily be 100 pages. A quarter of this book might well be taken up by descriptions of the music as it's being played. And you get to a point where you feel like you can kind of scan through those bits a little bit, because you might be more interested in the character development and the relationships. I found myself doing that, and then I would stop myself because I'd suddenly go, hang on, I'm missing the point here. This is an appreciation for music. And not just music itself, but the way that you feel when you listen to it, what it does to us as players and listeners, as audiences, as creators, as appreciators, as judges, whatever. Absolutely beautiful. This is a book that really captures what music can do for us as audiences, as human beings. And as I said at the beginning, it helps us appreciate the human capacity for creativity, for skill, for development, for community, for dedication, for all sorts of things. I'm so impressed by this. So far, at least, this is my favourite book in translation that's been published in 2023. I'm really, really amazed by this, and now I'm kind of annoyed that I haven't read Onda's other two books that are in translation. I'll get to them. Honeybees and Distant Thunder is really, really special. If you love music, if you love art, and it's one of those Japanese novels that feels distinctly Japanese in its tone, in its pacing, in its appreciation for empty space, and for its, what we in the English-speaking world might call, unconventional approach to narrative structure. It's really, really wonderful. So check it out. Please. It really is amazing. And subscribe for books.